If Batman's parents dies one more time.
Yeah.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the SkyePod. I'm Skye Jitani, and I'm joined today by two friends, one colleague here at the Holy Post, Esau McCaulley.
Hey, thank you for having me. Don't we have French Fridays? Isn't he basically a colleague?
Yeah, but, he's still a guest.
He's a recurring character or something.
And David French is joining us.
It's like the hip hop albums that always have the features, you know?
That's right.
Oh, it's like the Wu-Tang Clan. Who exactly is in the Wu-Tang Clan? It's like always just random people who are in there. This might be an analogy that's lost on most of the SkyePod. But trust me, for the 15 black people listening, this just hit the right spot.
Okay, well, before we get into the reason you two are here, just a quick announcement for those of you who follow my stuff. Chapter 2 of my new book, The World Born in You, is now available for Holy Post Plus subscribers. As some of you may know, I'm writing this new book as a serial, and I'm releasing a chapter every month. So chapter 2 is just released this week, and you can get that at Holy Post Plus. And we're going to be recording an audio version of that chapter at some point in the next couple of weeks, but go check that out. All right, we are here to do a summer Nerdfest.
Oh.
Because last night, my colleague Esau, my friend David, along with Phil Vischer, my son Isaac, and two of our other colleagues, Producer Mike and Emerson Slaughter, who's our social media guru, we all went to see an advanced screening of Superman, IMAX. Yeah. It was a fun evening out. We went to Buffalo Wild Wings and then enjoyed the movie together. And so the two other biggest nerds of the group, Esau and David, are joining me to talk about the movie. And we're going to give our thoughts and reviews and hopefully get into some of maybe the cultural influences or impact that this film may have. But we haven't done a real good Nerdfest in a while.
So how spoilery are we? Like, what kind of warning do we need to give to people?
I think we're going to get spoilery.
Okay, never mind. We can cut this part out. I was going to ask, when is the podcast?
This is going to come out Friday. The movie comes out Friday.
But don't listen to the podcast after you've seen the movie.
I mean, it's
we're going to spoil it. Yeah, we're going to spoil it. Okay.
Okay. So I think we should each go around to begin with and just give a brief sentence or two summary of our take of this movie.
Yes.
Okay. So Esau, do you want to begin?
We had to rate it. And so last night, right after it, I think I gave it a 6.5, which is probably the lowest take in our group. I think after having slept on it a little bit, I might up it to like a 7, a 7.5. So the movie is growing on me as I get distance from it. So 7.5, maybe 8 if I'm feeling very generous.
But overall, that's a positive score.
Overall, it's a positive score.
You enjoyed the movie.
If they announce a sequel, I'm going to the sequel.
Okay. David?
Yes.
I would say I'm going to say exactly as fun as I wanted it to be and exactly the change of pace that I wanted it to be. Because the Zack Snyder vision of Superman and Man of Steel and Batman versus Superman and the Snyder cut of Justice League was much darker.
Very dark.
Much darker.
Yeah.
Whereas this was a complete change of pace, much more reminiscent of, say, Guardians of the Galaxy and the Marvel Universe, which Gunn did. And that's what I was hoping. I was hoping that Gunn would be James Gunn and he would not try to be Zack Snyder.
Yeah.
And that's what I enjoyed the whole thing. And the more I thought about it, the more fun I had thinking about it. So I'm even happier than I was last night. And as you guys know, I was really happy last night.
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought you'd maybe taken something before we went to the theater.
It was a side of you I'd never seen. I've never seen full nerd French. And so this was like a whole new thing. I've seen political analysis, but I've never seen comic book French before. So it was great for me.
I've encountered it a couple times.
It's my true self.
Yes.
It's my true self.
Okay, for those of you who know me, I love Superman. I'm wearing a Superman hat right now. Yeah. I've loved that character since I was a little kid. I have been looking forward to this movie for a long, long time. In fact, back in, was it 2005 when the Brandon Routh Superman Returns was coming? I was so excited for that kind of reboot, and it was massively disappointing to me. The Zack Snyder version with Henry Cavill, I was super excited. In fact, they were filming that not very far from here, out in Aurora. And I was super excited about that one. I like that one, but it didn't thrill me because it was so dark and brooding and angsty. Yeah. So this new one by James Gunn, I again was very hopeful that we were going to, and for the most part, I'm very happy. So here's my summary is, this was a great James Gunn movie and a good Superman movie.
Oh, okay.
So we can talk about ranking it in, among Superman movies later, but I really enjoyed it. I would see it again. I thought it was fun from beginning to end, but I felt like it was first and foremost a James Gunn movie.
Yeah.
And there's, like there's certain filmmakers in the first 60 seconds, it's a Tarantino movie. Yeah. Right. And the same thing with James Gunn.
Paul Thomas Anderson.
Yes, exactly. And James Gunn's the same way. He does ensemble stories with lots of quirky characters. Yeah. That's here. He does a lot of silly humor. Yeah. He does that here. He does sort of acrobatic musical action scenes. Yeah. He does that here. He does super highly stylized action and doesn't do tons of character development. Same thing here. And he makes you smile from beginning to end, but he doesn't really make you feel anything super deeply. And this movie, again, I enjoyed it, but
so I'm going to disagree. I'm going to disagree.
Okay.
You went too far there, Skye.
we'll go with the gun part because as I was watching Guardians of the Galaxy, I found myself really invested in the raccoon. Like I felt something for the raccoon.
Which one?
The third one. Is that
the third? Well, the third one's all about Rocket.
I know what I'm saying. Like, well, if you could make me feel something for a raccoon, I'm not just smiling. I'm actually feeling something.
I felt like those movies, I thought he did a better job at tugging on the heartstrings than he did in this movie.
And even so, we don't want to. Maybe we can talk a bit about having an analysis of James Gunn. I think that he is at heart, whether he is a person, his movies aren't cynical.
No, that's true.
And there's a hopeful familial vibe that he does a really good job of writing and creating. And so for me, I guess I'll put it this way. And this is what I was thinking about. Maybe saying it's a great James Gunn and a good Superman movie is accurate. There is a floor for a James Gunn movie that is pretty high for me. Mm-hmm. And so if it was a James Gunn movie written by him, directed by him or whatever, or directed by him, it's basically going to be like, it starts at a B+.
Yeah.
And I think that I was judging it by initially wanting to have a transcendent classic Superman movie that made me feel like while I was watching Christopher Reeve. Mm-hmm. And it didn't do that, but it was actually a very good Superman
I feel
movie.
Exactly the same way. I don't think anything is going to touch the Richard Donner, Christopher Reeve 1978 Superman movie. Yeah. It's just in a completely different league. But I went into this... you thought this was just as good?
Go ahead.
Okay. I like this movie. I'm not criticizing it.
Let him cook. Okay, let's see what you got. Sorry, this is your show.
Okay, so a couple things. Like, I mean, number one on were there no feels here? Like, was there no? And I don't want to go all Skye and spoil the whole thing. Yeah. But I will say that if, as an adoptive father, watching through to the end, I got some major feels.
Oh yeah.
Yes.
Major feels at the very end. I thought that very end was very, very touching. I thought that, that whole, and I don't want to spoil everything, but to me, the way in which the family story played out was super touching.
Yes.
Yeah. So to me, it hit the feels there. But okay, here's my problem when reflecting back to Superman 1 and 2, which I'm going to be with you, I loved immensely. I also saw them when I was really young. Mm-hmm. And so it's like watching, that first moment when you see Star Wars, right? And how, A New Hope, the very first Star Wars, it's always going to hit you in that particular space where you're kind of, when you watch it, it goes back to that 10-year-old kid or however old you were when you first saw it. And so I think it's almost unfair to do that comparison because I don't know what a 56-year-old version of myself would think if I saw Superman in 1978 or 79 or whenever that was. And so I think it's very hard to penetrate that youthful, that nostalgia wall.
Yeah.
So I think it's kind of an apples and oranges thing. But I will say this, I felt like it connected with the spirit of that first film pretty darn well. Because the spirit of that first film was both like there was real emotion to it, but a lot of it was funny.
Mm-hmm.
The Lex Luthor character and his girlfriend, there was often a lot of that movie is funnier than you might remember. As I recall. So I felt like it connected with the spirit.
I think that's a very good take on it. And one of the things I probably appreciate most about this new movie is I think kids are going to love it.
Yeah.
Yes.
I think
totally.
if you are a 10-year-old kid today and you go see this movie, you're going to hopefully fall in love with this character the way that we may have when we saw the Christopher Reeve versions when we were young. So I appreciate that. And that James Gunn is taking this character back to a bright, hopeful, uplifting, positive vision rather than the dark, brooding, angsty Zack Snyder Superman kind of take. And the other thing I like is, if you remember, most people probably don't because it was terrible, and I left the theater in a rage, when Superman Returns came out.
Okay.
That movie was very indebted to the original Richard Donner, Christopher Reeve Superman. They tried to make it a continuation of it, and I almost felt like they were too dependent on that original Superman movie. And what I liked what James Gunn did here is they took a couple of things from the original Superman movie, like the score. They still had the John Williams Superman March.
Love it.
Although updated and modified for use in this film. And they had a couple of things that were sort of iconic from that movie, like the design of the Fortress of Solitude with the crystals. So there was just enough kind of hat tip to the Richard Donner movie that I felt was appropriate without depending too much on that heritage. So that I thought he just got that perfect.
Can I say something about what he said earlier? It was about an hour from where we lived to go to see this movie in IMAX. And for whatever reason, I just went and I decided to go back and revisit some old hip hop. Like it was a debate about which artists were the best. I want to talk about who they were, but it was just like, I remember being very passionate about who I thought was the best rapper in the 90s. And so I'm listening to this now as an adult, and I realized I was completely wrong. That was strictly through the eyes of nostalgia. Like to go back and revisit it now, I was able to see or hear that music in a way that I didn't hear when I was 16, 17 years old. Mm-hmm. And so that reminded me what he said about these movies. There is an emotional connection that we have to a movie that makes us feel a certain way at a certain age. And there hasn't been a movie like that that's happened to me since I was an adult, because I'm not in that stage of life anymore. But if I take a step back and say, character by character, is there any major character in this movie that I don't like? I think they nailed Lois Lane. I think they nailed Superman. I think they nailed Jimmy. And I think they nailed the chief reporter guy. I mean, the head of the newspaper. So
Barry White.
Those characters who are central to the mythology. And I was like, you know what? I actually like all of them. And I think it's not a spoiler to say, because he plays a central role in the trailer, the dog. Like the dog.
Crypto.
Yes.
Yeah. So
I was skeptical about the dog.
I was in on the dog. And so I just think that they did a good job of, these are characters who I can imagine seeing like 3 or 4 movies with these people and getting to know them over and over again. Some of the other characters, they feel like they were cameos.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure there's enough development there of the extra superheroes to really be interested in seeing them anymore.
I agree.
I thought Nathan Fillion as Green Lantern was awesome.
Uh-huh.
Yes.
That was an unexpected bonus, because I remember, the trailers, you very briefly see him with this absurd haircut. Looking very unsuperhero-like. Yeah. And he never looks like a superhero in the movie. I mean, he looks like a middle-aged dude with a bad haircut and a funny suit, you know? But he's just consistently hilarious all the way through. And I don't know if you noticed the subtlety here. Well, it wasn't very subtle, but when he intervenes at one point in the movie, again, they'll keep this vague, the green fists that he forms to defeat the enemies all end up flipping them to bird.
I saw that.
I don't know why I cracked up. I'm interested, though, because I do think we had a divergence of opinion on Lex Luthor.
Yes. We can get into that for a second, but before we go to Lex, one of the things I thought they that James Gunn did pretty well with the script is when you look at those other side characters, whether Green Lantern or Hawkgirl or Mr. Terrific, who I really, really liked.
Oh, he was great.
He was fantastic. Like those characters they're kind of jaded, a little bit cynical, kind of gritty. And you contrast that with the Superman character who, in a way, and it's set up right from the beginning of the film, is kind of naive.
Yeah.
He sees the positivity and goodness in everyone, and he's always one of the trailers he rescues a dog. There's another point where he rescues a squirrel. When they're battling the giant kaiju, Godzilla-like creature, Superman's trying to figure out a way to safely move that creature away from the city without having to kill it.
Yeah.
And the other superheroes are like, "Come on, we just got to kill this thing." Like, so he's presented as really innocent and pure and uncynical, which I like that they made a positive Superman. Very different than the Zack Snyder Superman, who's all angsty and snaps the neck of his enemy at the end of the movie. Remember?
I think that's one of the things I was thinking about as the movie was developing. Is one of the hardest things he talk about in fiction and in literature is to make someone who is virtuous narratively interesting. Mm-hmm. And so I was glad that Superman was doing good for the sake of doing good versus kind of saving the world on the way to saving his family. It's usually like whatever larger good that I do in most modern superhero movies are like a secondary outcome of my primary objective. Yeah. And so I think he found a way to make someone virtuous interesting. And the way he did it, which they did, and this is once again not spoiled because it's in the trailer, he's vulnerable. Both like physically, because you see that he gets beat up, that's in the trailer. And you see as the movie unfurls, there's kind of a simplicity to the way that he thinks that is outdone by Lex Luthor. Like Lex Luthor is a devious character, and the way that he's manipulating events, and Superman is just kind of plodding along. And you kind of want Superman as you're watching it to go, "No, Superman, like you're being manipulated. Like figure out a way."
I want to get into that in a little bit because my take on the Superman character is probably the part that's going to get me in the most trouble of this conversation. But before that, let's go back to David and Lex Luthor. I found him to be kind of one-dimensional in this movie, and I didn't dislike him, but I think this is part of the way James Gunn makes movies. James Gunn is not a subtle filmmaker. He, rather than showing you why Lex hates Superman, or rather than showing you something subtle, he just has the character say it. Yeah. Right? They just monologue. Yeah. If you remember, there's this incredible moment in the original Superman movie where Clark Kent is in Lois Lane's apartment, and he's slouched over and he's wearing his glasses, and he has this moment where he's thinking about revealing his true identity to Lois, and he takes off his glasses, and Christopher Reeve just straightens up. Oh yeah. And no words are spoken, nothing is said, and in the course of a few seconds, you see him transform into Superman. And then he thinks about it, he puts his glasses back on, he goes back into Clark. Yeah. And like so much is conveyed in that 15 seconds without any words being spoken. That is not the way James Gunn makes a movie. He has Lex Luthor just saying to the screen what he hates about Superman. And even at like a climax in the movie when Superman is declaring kind of his big lesson that he learned from this whole story, he just says it. Yeah. There's no subtlety in the storytelling, and that's fine. It's just James Gunn. But I kind of miss some of that. And for Lex, it was always just, I just hate this guy, and like I hate Superman, but he just says it. He never shows it. Like Lex is jealous that the world loves Superman instead of him, but you don't see that displayed in the movie. You don't see the population shifting its loyalties from Lex to Superman or then back again. It's just said, it's just stated. And I found like that's kind of lazy storytelling, but when you cram so much into a movie, you don't have a lot of time for subtleties.
Yeah. I liked the Lex Luthor character, number one, because he was just very well played, is incredibly diabolical, and also incredibly calm. Like the one thing that I liked about it was when he was feeling full of himself, chaos could be happening around him. And he had total confidence in his crew. He had total confidence in his technology. He had total confidence in the moment. And I thought that was portraying Lex Luthor as this hyper competent mogul who I've never found Lex Luthor like the most compelling villain because he has no powers, right? Compared to Superman, etc. But here in this movie, you could see how he could be that villain and the way in which he made Superman vulnerable. Because the knock on Superman has always been, well, you lose a little bit of the drama because he's just so strong.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
He's
He's just so powerful. And I thought the movie did a really nice job of both making him emotionally vulnerable and making him not truly physically vulnerable, but able to be defeated, at least in the short run. And I thought that it was kind of an ingenious way that they did it. And it's so much as expectations. When I walk into a Zack Snyder Superman movie or a Zack Snyder superhero movie or Christopher Nolan superhero movie, I know that I'm walking into something that in Christopher Nolan's case, it's going to be not just a superhero movie, it's going to be a film.
Yeah.
You take the 3 Batmans, put them on a shelf, they're their own thing. They're almost not even in the superhero genre. They're so transcendent. But then you take a Zack Snyder, what's he doing here? His whole thesis, as Sonny Bunch says, is what if the gods, small g, were real?
Yeah.
Like, what would that be like? How would that radiate out and impact all of us? And his movies are like a exploration of that, which is one of the reasons why they're darker. Mm-hmm. James Gunn is just like, this is fun.
Yeah.
This is fun. I enjoy this. I'm having a great time making this movie. And I appreciate that. I love both ways. I love both visions. But to call it, I love the way you said it's a James Gunn movie, as you kind of saw it first. And for me, that's a feature.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's definitely a feature, not a bug.
I think that one of the criticisms that people have made of the Marvel universe is that some of the movies felt all the same.
Yeah.
And so the fact that you have a distinctive director, this is my freezing cold take, or maybe this is a hot take. I think that Gunn is the kind of director who can make a good Superman movie. I'm not sure that he can make a good Batman movie.
Yeah, I don't think.
Oh, yeah.
And so could you bring Snyder back to do because like there's such contrasting characters.
Right.
And so I think he does good with someone who's and the same thing with Guardians of the Galaxy. It's kind of a quirky, fun bunch. But if you want someone who's like dealing with that kind of darkness, I wonder how it's going to come, because he's going to make a Batman movie.
No, he's in charge of the DCU, but he's not the one actually writing all the scripts and directing all the movies. He's overseeing it. But hopefully he's giving other writers, directors, and creatives their freedom to make the films that have to fit within the universe he's constructing. So I agree with you. You have to match the filmmaker with the character.
Yes.
And I think he is a pretty good match for Superman. And for me, it felt like when I was a kid growing up, Saturday morning cartoons, Justice League was always the highlight.
Yeah.
This felt like a Justice League cartoon updated and made into a feature-length live-action movie.
So can I get slightly spoilery on the, what's the guy, Lex Luthor character?
Yeah.
So the way that he sets it up, where he's kind of directing the fight from like
Ultraman,
Ultraman.
Superman. Yeah.
And so that to me was just like it showed to me, and maybe this is what I want to say, there was a sophistication related to his evil that I hadn't seen in a superhero villain in a long time. In other words, he seemed genuinely to have figured out every possible scenario and have it worked out. And I was actually curious as to how Superman was going to win, given the things that were set up against him. And we won't get into how he resolves it, but even the resolution of the problem and the way that Superman eventually winds up victorious, he doesn't outsmart him. It's kind of like, as you'll see, it's kind of a quirky way of it kind of being resolved. Mm-hmm. So I just thought they did a really good job, even if I didn't love the character at every moment, the setup and all the things that are going on around it. It was like there is nothing that he hadn't accounted for in his like battle against Superman. And I felt like it looked like that the way the film played itself out, I could tell or present it as Luthor has been working on this for years, and we're coming into the culmination of a plan. And that's the part that I liked about it.
So there's two things there. One, the problem you always have with the Superman character is how do you create a villain that can go toe-to-toe with him? Yeah. And I thought it was really smart the way they did it is they show that Lex is sort of the puppet master behind the whole thing, but he's calling every punch and every, so it's a way for him to be fighting Superman without physically fighting Superman. So that was pretty smart. But your point raises another question that I want to ask both you guys. The movie, I think to its credit, is not another origin story. It's not, baby Kal-El being put into a ship and all that.
Yeah.
And I like that too. On the other hand, it drops you into the action right from the get-go. And it seems like everything is fully formed. Like Lex's hatred of Superman is fully formed. His plan to destroy Superman is fully formed. Yeah. Clark has been working at the Daily Planet for a couple of years. Superman's been around for a couple of years. His relationship with Lois is already in place. She already knows his secret identity. It's all there already. So you don't see the development of either the romantic relationship or the villain hero relationship. You don't see any. It's just all there, and you're dropped right into it.
Yeah.
Was it overkill? Would it have been helpful to see more of the development of Lex's animosity towards Superman or were you happy with it all just being fully formed and you're dropped into the blender?
I would say something. I think that the amount of people in America or in the world who don't know all of the beats of the Superman origin story is so small that it's a waste of a movie to do it.
Yeah, I don't want the origin story again, but the relationships and the dynamics.
What I'm saying to you is, I think normally when there's a new superhero movie or franchise, I normally judge the second movie because the first movie is basically all of the stuff you just said. And so the fact that he skipped the first movie effectively and made the second movie first gave me a lot of goodwill. And so I didn't necessarily think of the negative. I was like, I'm glad I don't have to watch him land and grow up and kind of figure out, how good is he going to be in football in Kansas? He's going to throw the football over the fence. Like all of that stuff I didn't need to see. But had you done it well, I would have watched it anyway.
David?
I loved the choice to just drop into the middle. I mean, we've been through so many origin stories. Yes. I mean, we've had the original Superman origin story. We've had the Zack Snyder Superman origin story. We've had, if you go to Marvel and DC, we've had so many different origin stories of so many different superheroes. The Snyder Cut had an origin story in it, of one of the superheroes. It was, so we've done the origin story a lot. And I thought it was a very interesting creative choice to just drop it into a fully realized universe. So here comes the Justice Gang. Yeah. Who's the Justice Gang? Well, it's not really explained, but everybody knows who they are, right? Who are these other superheroes? Aliens exist, and everybody knows it. Somebody talks about a pocket universe, and nobody's like, what the heck, a pocket universe? They're more like, oh, a pocket universe. Yeah. Totally, I get that. So you dropped into this fully realized superhero world, meta-human world, and I just thought it was a fun, different creative choice. The opening scroll in the movie where it talks about, 300 years ago, 30 years ago, and it ends up at 3 minutes ago was a really clever way to get rolling.
Yep.
And so I'm not going to say that this is something that I'd like to see every time we're doing reboots or reimaginations, but I thought it was a fun way to do a reboot. And it also makes a lot of sense because remember, Gunn had already directed a Suicide Squad movie. He'd already done the Peacemaker series on HBO with John Cena. So he's already been a part of a DC universe that exists. Yeah. And so I think it does make sense. And, you saw the Peacemaker in this movie. And so it did make sense, I think, to drop it just into the middle. It could have been a disaster, but I thought it actually worked. Not saying we need to do this every time. Yeah. Origin stories can be a lot of fun, but...
Don't worry, this is not the end of the episode. There's actually plenty more. But to listen to the rest, you need to be a Holy Post Plus subscriber. So head over to holypost.com/SkyePod and sign up for just $5 a month. Not only will you get uninterrupted episodes of the SkyePod, which means you'll never have to hear this dumb announcement again, but you'll also get access to everything else at Holy Post Plus, including episodes of Getting Schooled by Caitlin Chess, bonus interviews, live streams, the Holy Post Book Club, exclusive merchandise, and a whole bunch more. And you'll get the warm, fuzzy feeling of knowing that you're supporting our work of creating smart, pro-neighbor Christian content. So head over to holypost.com/SkyePod and subscribe today.